David, your column this past week caught my eye. The title is How a Cultural Shift Favors Harris. I'm going to do that thing where I read what you wrote and ask you more about it. But you wrote, right now, I'd say Kamala Harris is benefiting from the beginning of a cultural shift and is beginning to have the cultural winds at her back. Donald Trump is beginning to be slapped in the face by those winds. Tell me more.
That's such a good opening. You should do that every week. I've been traveling a lot. I've been in 13 or 14 states in the last 2 weeks. Some red, like Nebraska and Kansas. Some blue, like Colorado and New York and California. And one thing I've noticed is people talking about negativity. They're just tired of the negativity of our public life. And there's this periods where you go through periods of indignation where people are really angry. But then you can only be angry for so long. And Donald Trump won because people were really indignant. But my sense is that they've had enough of it. In the 1960s and early 1970s, there were 4,000 bombings on American college campuses. It was a Days of Rage, it was called. By 1974, they're into Est and Crystal and New Age stuff. And so people eventually get tired of all the negativity. And I think that cultural pivot is happening right now at a time when Kamala Harris, and she's not because she's reading, it's just who she is cheerful and joyful, and let's not be negative all the time, and let's have a good time as a country. And so I think she's benefiting from the cultural pivot. Is it enough to candor the White House? No, but it helps.
Jonathan, that word joy, Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, when she sat down with the three reporters from the National Association of Black Journalists today, one of them asked her about how she views attacks on her joyful warrior approach. And she defended it, and she said people will try to sometimes use your best asset against you. What do you make of that and this notion that she's benefiting from a cultural wave?
I don't think she's benefiting from a cultural. Yes, she is, and I read your column, David. It's not so much that she's like, see this wave coming and she's riding. No. She is part of the culture, and that's why I think when she became the top of the ticket, everyone marveled at how quickly the light switch flipped. And it happened so organically, in a very dramatic fashion. That to me says you can't manufacture that. And she was able to do that because she is the culture. She is part of the culture. She's part of what's driving this culture that I think you said will slap Donald Trump in the face. It's slapping him in the face now, which is why I think he's so discombobulated. He doesn't know how to deal with her. I think it's why the polls the momentum is moving in her direction. And to your point about Happy Warrior, and David is right. This is the way the vice president has always been, which sort of reinforces what you're saying. It's not that she has met up with the culture. She, in her entire career, has been the happy warrior about helping people and leaving aside the negativity. It just happens to hit at the right person at the right time.
Is there a cultural or historical precedent for this kind of thing?
Well, yeah. Look at Donald Trump. He emerged in the 80s. Which was an era of self and of money and we're all capitalism. The culture was with him, and then he sort of vanished and went down because the culture had shifted. And so we politicians and pop celebrities rise and fall by how the culture moves. And culture really does move, and you get these periods of anger and hostility and conflict. World War I then leads to the flappers in the 20s. World War II leads to the domesticity of the 1950s. So decades shift, and people want something different. And so I think we're in one of those shifts.